My name is Chanoch, and I will be your guide as we explore some of the secrets and hidden mysteries of the Western Wall. Now, over the course of our tour, if there's anything that I say that you're having trouble understanding because of my very thick Israeli accent, you just ask me and I'll be happy to repeat it. And you're kind of smirking at me. Yes, this accent, as you probably can tell, was born and bred in New York City. For almost 4 years now, I've lived in Israel, in Modi'in, Israel's newest city, located midway between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Modi'in is the ancient home of the Maccabees. The Maccabees, you may remember, who defeated the Greeks, cleansed the temple, and brought us the holiday of Hanukkah. You may not know this, but during Hanukkah here in Israel, we consume per capita more donuts in 8 days than anywhere else in the entire world. Excuse me, I'm getting all choked up about us being the donut eating champions. Okay, now, when we're out at the Western Wall Plaza, we're looking up at the Temple Mount. There's a large Islamic shrine. It's not a mosque, it's a shrine. It's blue. It's got a gold-colored dome. In English, it's called the Dome of the Rock. Can anyone tell me what the central feature within the Dome of the Rock is? The rock! Boom! And this rock is right over here. That rock forms the center of our story. In Hebrew, it's known as the Even HaShetiyah. In English, it's the foundation stone. According to Jewish tradition, this is where God began the creation of the earth. That stone is central to everything that we're talking about, and that stone sits right under there. Okay. Now, we're going to cover about 4,000 years of history in about 6.5 minutes. Let's take a deep breath, buckle up tight, and away we go. 4,000 years ago, Abraham gets a command by God to go to a certain spot, Mount Moriah, Har HaMoriah. He's to sacrifice his son Yitzchak, Isaac, on that very same stone. The good news is it's only a test of faith. Okay, so what a relief. We jump now 1,000 years. It's 3,000 years ago. David, unites the 12 tribes of Israel, makes Jerusalem his capital, right here in Ir David, the city of David, right down the hill. David burns with a fire of love for God, and he wants to build a temple for the Lord on that very same rock. So what he does is he acquires the entire plot of land from Arabna the Jebusite, but he doesn't build it. That task falls to his son, Shlomo, Solomon, who builds a magnificent temple. It's the heart and soul of the nation for over 400 years. It is everything to the people of Israel. The prophet Isaiah Yeshayahu describes it as a house of prayer for all nations. 340 in English? Come on in. We're only about 3,000 years ago. We got a couple of thousand years of history. Join us. Okay, so the temple is wonderful. But the problem is, guys, this is the Middle East. We live in a tough neighborhood. Things change all the time. So along come the Babylonians sweeping in from the northeast, destroying towns, villages, and cities throughout Judea, surround Jerusalem, breach the walls, conquer the city, burn the temple to the ground, take the population, Al-Naharot, Babel, by the rivers of Babylon we wept, and carry them off into exile in Babylonia. It's supposed to be the end of the story, in which case this would be a very short tour. Thanks very much, and let's go to Holy Bagel and have something to eat. But, this is the Middle East, things change. 50 years later, Persia now controls Babylonia. And as I used to hear in the old country, there's a new sheriff in town, Koresh, Cyrus. He makes a decree the Jewish people can go back to Israel, rebuild the temple, no political independence, but a group does go back. But they don't have the wealth that King Solomon did. The temple's not as elaborate, it's not as ornate, but oh heck, it's still a temple. That temple undergoes several renovations over time, including my neighbors from Modi'in, the Maccabees. But the real change happens in the Roman era. The Romans appointed a guy by the name of Herod king. Herod has what we used to call an edifice complex. He loves to build. He builds a massive port in Caesarea, 3-tiered palaces in Masada, fortresses in Herodian and all over the place. He is just unbelievable. Don't misunderstand me. He's not a nice guy. He's a psycho. He's a wacko. He's a megalomaniac. He's busy killing wives and sons like nothing. Good man could this guy build. He's got this idea. He's going to build this wonderful giant temple. Not because he's so religious, but he wants to build a tourist attraction unrivaled in the ancient world. So, he wants to put it on the exact same spot, of course, where the first two temples have been. This is still considered the second temple, but it doesn't quite fit, figuratively and literally. So, the topography doesn't work for Herod, no problem. He changes the topography, slices off this end of the mountain over here, uses these stones for building. But he still has a problem, because between us and the upper city, now known as the Jewish Quarter, you know those guys with the pizza, falafel, shawarma, burgers, barbs? There's a huge valley. And there's a huge valley on this side. So what's he going to do? He needs to put this large platform. So he gathers all the kind of rocks that he can, and dirt, and builds a huge mound, holding it all together with 4 big retaining walls. And he creates, now this is a very precise engineering term, so please pay attention, a giant stone box to put the temple on. This box has 4 walls. There's a northern wall, an eastern wall, a southern wall, and the wall we're most familiar with, the advanced group, I love it. Yes, the western wall. Now, the back part of the temple, over that stone, the foundation stone, is where the Aron HaBrit, the Ark of the Covenant, had been placed at the time of the first temple. That's referred to in Hebrew as the Kodesh HaKodeshim, the Holy of Holies. That spot is closest to the western wall, which is why to this day people pray at the western wall. That's why it has sanctity, and that's why people aren't out there typically at the southern wall and the eastern wall. We're going to be visiting that a little later on. Very important to note, we will not be seeing walls of the temple itself. Those are long gone. We will be seeing the retaining wall on the western side. Okay, so all is great. The temple very much looks like this. As you can tell, this is original DVD footage of 2,000 years ago. No, obviously not, but this is the recreation based on Josephus's eyewitness description. Now, I'm going to give a few measurements, not too many. After 4 years in Israel, I'm used to speaking metric. For my American friends, when I say meter, you just think yard, and then we're okay. The temple itself stood 50 meters high. As a frame of reference, the dome of the rock over the current same spot stands only 23 meters. The walls themselves were 30 meters high. Now, when you're at the prayer plaza, and you're out there saying, well, there's a really big wall, understand that there are 17 levels below your feet. It is massive. 144,000 square meters, or enough to hold 11, what's called here, football fields. In America, we call them soccer fields. Now, the prayer plaza itself is 57 meters. But the wall on the western side is 488 meters, the size of 5 American football fields. It is humongous. Okay, fantastic, it's wonderful, but as I told you at the beginning, this is the Middle East, guys. You can't expect things to last for very long. The Romans have been in control now for about 100 years. The people rise up and revolt because they're increasingly oppressive, and, well, it doesn't go very well for us. The temple is burned to the ground on the 9th day of the month of Av, 1 week ago, in the year 70. Now, you'll see part of the western retaining wall is still there. Okay, this situation lies in ruin for quite a while, more than 600 years. And then the neighborhood changes again. When Muslims come to town, they put up a shrine right over that very same rock. Now, very important to note that 60 years later, they develop an oral tradition that Muhammad's horse on his night journey took off from that rock to Al-Aqsa, the furthest mosque. Jerusalem is never mentioned in the Quran, by the way. Okay, so very important to note that they covered it as a shrine and then developed a tradition around that. Okay. Come on, this is supposed to be instantaneous. Now, this stays until the modern era. The modern era for us in Jerusalem is 700 years ago. In America, I remember something like from 1806. It's like, wow, this is so ancient. Yeah, well, this is Israel. It's very different. Okay, so 700 years ago, Muslims decide they want to begin living next to their shrine. And they want to live on the same level as the walls, but they have the same problem that Herod had, that valley. So what they did, it's very interesting. They began building a series of arches, and on top of the arches, began building homes and schools and other institutions, to the situation that came right up until 1948. The Western Wall, the Kotel, was a very narrow, very small spot. In that war of 1948, the War of Independence, the Jordanian Arab Legion conquers the entire Old City, goes through the Jewish quarter systematically, and destroys every synagogue, every school, every institution that they can. Which is why when you're in the Jewish quarter and things look relatively new, it's because they are. It's all since 1967. June 1967, Israel reunites Jerusalem and creates the Western Wall Plaza. If there were a red arrow that said, "You are here," we would be over here. Now I'm going to switch back to that Second Temple picture to show you a couple of things real quick. Notice these arches and the bridge that goes over it. That comes up later on, very important. This is the main Herodian street. This is the Broadway of its time. This was the happening place where all the shops were. At various points as we walk, yeah, you can't tell from here, as we go northward, the Western Wall continues 20 meters, and then 10 meters, and eventually we meet up with the street. Any questions so far? Years ago, blue sky, nothing here. Now, I went through telling you we get no rain, and here you hear the pitter patter of drops. Let me explain what that is. Above us is a madrasa, an Islamic school. They have had a cistern on their premises for many hundreds of years. That cistern has had a small, slow leak. And stalactites are beginning to form. Now, the water coming down is not water from the time of the Second Temple. It's likely to be from last winter. So follow me. This was filled with water rushing that way. The top, those slabs of stone, filled with water. It lasted less than 80 years.